For a while, I noticed that meals were taking more from our days than they were giving. And I don't mean the sitting and eating together part. I actually really love that one. But it's more so just the prepping the food, getting the food on the table, and literally everything that comes before that. And I've realized that something that is meant to support us, to nourish us, and to also bring us joy was becoming a source of stress. And this is when I started to just simplify things. So firstly, I let go of the idea that every meal had to be perfect. So perfectly balanced, made from scratch, and also that it's got to be something slightly different or slightly new each time. Instead, I'm thinking about nutrition across the day and sometimes even across the week. So if lunch was something very basic, like just a quesadilla with a little egg on top or something, I would make sure that dinner has something more. So I really love making meals from scratch. I love it that the food is more nutritious, and I also like doing it. But sometimes there's just not enough time for it. And I kind of went away from that idea that everything had to be 100% from scratch and every single day as well. So some days I'll still make things from scratch, and other days, if we find good alternatives, we just buy them at the store. We also eat a lot of the same meals on rotation. So for example, for breakfast, we usually have a few options. So we've got porridge, French toast casserole, and maybe just like bread with eggs on top. And that's it. And we just rotate that around. And then when it comes to the weekend and we have a little bit more time, that's when we might just do something a little bit more special. The same goes for lunch. Like lunch is usually leftovers, but sometimes we just can't rely on leftovers. So just make sure that there's another few things that are easy enough to prepare so it's not too overwhelming. The same goes for dinners. So we've got a few meals that our family really enjoys, and I usually do them on rotation. But the more often you do a meal, the easier it gets and the less you have to think while preparing it. So rather than trying to make heaps of new meals all the time, I usually just do one new meal a week if I've got the margin for it. And if our family enjoys it, then we just keep it as another option for dinners. And if not, well, we just let go of that meal and yeah, go back to the ones that we already know and like and enjoy. So one thing I've actually never really done is making separate meals for everyone. So usually everybody just eats the same. And if I know that it's something that the children are unfamiliar with or that they would maybe not really eat, then I just make sure that there's something nice that goes along with it, just so they have some options there. So one example is butter chicken. They're not the biggest fan, so I make sure we've got some naan bread that I just make along to have with it. And then they only just have to try a little bit of the actual meal, but then they still have the naan bread to fall back on. But yeah, that's just slight adjustments. Usually it's just the same meal for everyone. But yeah, I just try to think, what can I add that they will definitely enjoy and that matches the meal and that just becomes part of this meal then for us. So one thing that helped me heaps was to just add a little bit of prep work to while I'm already cooking and making a meal. So an example for that is with sauces, dressings, or marinades, when you have all the different ingredients out already, like just make an extra batch and just freeze it. It doesn't take that much space, but the next time you don't have to stand there, get all the spices and look up how much of what to put in. So it just saves a lot of time. Sometimes I also like to just bulk prep in advance. So I'm not a big fan of making 5 different meals for the week ahead of time. But what I do is to just pick one ingredient and prep it in bulk. So for example, that could be garlic. So I peel all the cloves, and that's something where little children can help as well, or at least play with the garlic. And then later you can actually just put it in the blender and later put it in little ice cube trays with a bit of oil or a bit of water or something just to hold it together. And then the next time I need garlic for a meal, I can literally just pull out some of those little ice cube garlics and just throw them in the meal, and it's just so much quicker. The same can even go for meat. Like I usually just buy whole chickens because they're just much cheaper, and the carcass I can always make stock out of. I can either roast the chicken as a whole and keep it whole and freeze it whole, or sometimes I take the time to just cut them all up and I collect drumsticks, wings here and everything, or I already prepared the breast, so I have them for chicken schnitzel or something, of thighs, I just dice them up and have them ready to go for meals like butter chicken or something like that. And then I just freeze them in different bags and just write down how I cut it up there. That's just really helpful because yeah, I already have the meat prepped and it's one step less the next time I want to cook, but I also don't have to worry about dealing with raw meat in the kitchen and cleaning everything nicely afterwards. So I find it really helps to just think, okay, what steps of this meal can I double up and just keep in the freezer, and what steps can I prep in advance, like garlic and onion, prepare the meat in a certain way. So all of these are just little things that just reduce the pressure later on because there's less steps to cooking a meal and you can whip up even a from scratch meal really quickly. So another thing that really helped was just having a rough idea of what meals we're gonna have during the week. And sometimes just knowing the meals for the next few days, that's already enough. And if you're in a season of overwhelm, like just think about what meals are we going to have tomorrow. So I'd usually just write it down in a little table, just breakfast, lunch, snack, dinner. Sometimes if I don't know straight away what we're going to have there, I'll just leave it blank and maybe something will come to me and I can just write it down as time goes on. And as I said, like with lunch, I can't always rely on leftovers. So I always like to just have a little option there. And if we actually do have leftovers, I just push that option to the next day. And because we already know what meals we're gonna cook, we can also start prepping them early. So I really often start prepping dinner in the morning. Just get a few things done that I can already get done. And that again just reduces the whole stress of cooking a whole meal in the evening, which is usually a time where children just want a little bit more attention. But obviously that always depends on your life situation. My husband had to work long hours all the time, so I just had to find something that would help me still cook dinner while looking after our children. Oh, and when writing down meals for certain days, just think about what's happening on those days. So if you know that one day you'll be out of the house or the day will be just a little bit busier, just make sure the meals are a bit simpler, or that you rely on something that you prepped in advance and have in the freezer ready to pull out. And then on the days that are just a little bit emptier and a little bit slower, you can just cook a meal that takes a little bit more time. Or even include your children in the meal prep then, because they love doing these things. But it does take a lot more time when you include children in cooking. So with all of this in place, meals started to just feel different again. Something simpler, but also something more enjoyable for all of us. And when we sit down together to eat, that part feels full. And I try to stay there, to enjoy it, to be present, to say grace, and to be thankful for the food that we have and for the people around the table that we get to share the food with. Because that's what I would like meals to be.